Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood, and Robert Paul Johnson is usually my co-host. And we are the Last Nighters. You can find us at lastnighters.com and also on the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel. And tonight we're going to be doing Half Baked, and this is going to be the 186th show of this here show. Run on show on show. Anyway, you can find the show notes more at lastnighters.com/186. And without further ado, let's introduce our guest. He's been with us many times in the past. Recent episodes were for Gold, Hotel Rwanda, Captain Phillips, Three Idiots, and also El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. And he is, of course, known for doing Breaking Liberty, which is an analysis of Breaking Bad. And he also does a bunch of other libertarian-inspired projects. And he has a new one that he's going to talk about tonight that is related to this film, Half Baked. Welcome back to the show, Jared Wall of Breaking Liberty. And what's the new outfit called?
New outfit is called the Hemp Spot. It's an online business that my wife and I started selling Delta 8 THC cannabis products. So it's the Hemp Spot, THChempspot.com. Yeah, we started it probably about, I would say, a month and a half ago. And it's been going good so far. And we're excited to see if we can build it into something. And I'm excited to be here to talk to you about a movie that is quite pro to that kind of a business venture.
Right. Yeah, they definitely get into a business venture of sorts, and for seemingly good reasons, which we will get into. But I think viewers on YouTube and also on our Patreon who can view us right now can see that there is a coupon code available. If they go to your website and enter this promo code, they will get 10% off their order. Why don't you tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's coupon code Last Night. It doesn't matter, all caps or all undercase, it doesn't matter, but you get 10% off your order. And as a token of appreciation to our hosts here, we'll also give a commission back to Daniel and Robert as kind of a thank you for letting me plug this business venture on their podcast here. So yeah, coupon code or promo code Last Night, you get 10% off your order, and the guys here get a little commission. And actually, anybody, regardless of coupon code or not, anybody spends $90 or more gets free shipping.
All right, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with free shipping. Now, are there any restrictions like related to locations, like where somebody might be? Should they maybe not go to your website if just in case?
Well, I mean, I guess let's back up for a second. Just real quick, what Delta 8 THC products are, just in case some people might not know. We're currently here in the state of Washington, where marijuana cannabis has been legalized. However, in a whole bunch of the rest of the country, cannabis remains illegal, remains a black market Schedule I drug. However, in 2014 and in 2018, they passed the feds passed a farm bill which included legalizing the cultivation of industrial hemp, so for purposes of things like making clothing and rope and plastics and petroleum type products, things like that. So they legalized the cultivation of industrial hemp. In that bill, they tried to make sure that people could not get high as a result. So they said that any hemp being cultivated, any cannabis plants being cultivated for industrial purposes had to have less than 0.3% THC, which is obviously the chemical that in cannabis that gets you high. However, they specified when they said that it had to have less than 0.3% THC, they specified Delta 9 THC, which is a particular variant of the polymer. It's by far the most commonly found variant of the polymer, but there are other versions of THC that are found naturally in the cannabis plant. And so people figured that out and started kind of focusing on Delta 8 THC instead of Delta 9 THC, and basically figured out a way around the state's prohibition. So it's a really, being a libertarian, it's a story that I love. Market entrepreneurship and ingenuity beating state prohibition. I really love that story. But to answer your question, there actually are some states and some jurisdictions that have outlawed Delta 8. That being said, most of those states, if most of those jurisdictions have ongoing legal battles going on about them, so it's still kind of a gray area. And so, maybe do some research yourself. But, I'm going to whisper this so that the police don't hear. But we're willing to ship wherever in the country. So it's federally legal, and I'm not overly concerned after conversations that I had with attorneys before we got into it. I don't find the risk to be so great that I would be afraid to ship to anywhere. But you, as the receiver, would also have to make that kind of judgment call as well. So hopefully that answered your question. I was a little bit long-winded, but that's what I got to say about that.
No, that's great. We're actually down a man tonight, so any additional content that we can fill the hour with, well, work perfect for me. So anyway, people can go to thchempspot.com and enter the promo code last night for 10% off your order. And that is last night, no spaces or anything like that, and you'll get your 10%. And we will earn a small commission as well. So if this is something that's up your guys' alley as an audience member, do check it out. You'll save some money. We'll earn a little bit of money, and everyone gets a beneficial circle jerk of goodness.
The beauty of the market, yeah, mutually beneficial.
That's right. Okay, well, why don't we get into this movie? Because we do have a little bit more content to go over. And so we normally start off with what we call the Google description, which oddly enough is what it is. And I'm going to do the sound effect. Womp. That's right. We're talking about Half Baked tonight. This is a stoner movie that was critically panned at the box office. Was critically panned and was a box office flop, but it has since become a cult classic, and it helped establish Dave Chappelle's career and his show that came out a few short years after this movie was released. So here is the Google description. Half Baked, rated R, came out in 1998 as a comedy/stoner film, 1 hour and 22 minutes. Has a 6.7 on the IMDb, 29% Rotten Tomatoes, 16% Metacritic, and 85% of Google users like it. When a member of their crew gets arrested for killing a New York City police horse by feeding it junk food, 3 slackened stoners are forced to get off their butts and raise bail by selling pot stolen from a pharmaceutical lab. It's a risky plan, but hey, these are stand-up guys who would do anything to help out a friend in need. This came out January 16, 1998, directed by Tamra Davis, who also did Billy Madison, if I recall. It had a box office of $17.5 million, which is not so hot. I think it cost about that much to make it. Stars Dave Chappelle in numerous roles, has Jim Brewer, Guillermo Diaz, and Harlan Williams, and a couple of great cameos, which I'm sure we're going to talk about tonight. But Jared, what is your opening for Half Baked?
Oh, well, it's a fun movie. It's funny. I can see how critics might not have liked it so much. The plot maybe wasn't the cleanest, but it did have some really funny moments. Had some really funny cameos, as you mentioned. Jon Stewart, probably my favorite. Maybe Snoop Dogg, and Bob Saget was also a really funny one too. But yeah, I mean, it's just Kenny getting arrested for killing a horse and getting charged with murdering a police officer. That's pretty wild. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And then getting into selling weed to raise money for his bail, and then the beef with the other dealer Samson there, and then having to rob the lab to sell the weed, and then getting caught, and then making a deal with the cops, and it was all. There's a lot to. Surprisingly, I wasn't sure how much there would be in there for us to talk about. From issues, from a libertarian Rothbardian standpoint, but there was plenty to get into. So it was a fun movie. A few laugh out loud moments. The plot was, it was a hour and 20-minute comedy, so it was about what you would expect. But I enjoyed it, and there's surprisingly a good amount for us to dive into, I think.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that my co-host Robert usually doesn't like. He doesn't like comedies. He thinks that there's usually not much to talk about. However, I usually find a bunch of stuff. We actually did Billy Madison a couple of years ago and found quite a bit to talk about. We also did that for Nacho Libre and for Napoleon Dynamite. The follow-up to that was Gentlemen Broncos, and it had a ton of stuff to talk about as well. So I know that he has this like gut reaction that there's nothing to talk about in these movies, but time and time again, we do find things to discuss. And this one is no different. I took a bunch of notes just as I was watching this with my wife, and I was like, oh, there's a good point to talk about. Oh, there's another one. There's another one. So, I mean, we could probably go a little bit long on this one. Not that we need to, since you've already used up some of our time hawking your goods, your wares to our audience. We could save 10% by using the promo code last night.
That's right.
So
THChempspot.com. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And I'll put the banner scrolling by just one more time. So just in case people missed it the first go around. So we'll let that run for a little while here. So the first thing that really stood out to me, and I was relating this to sort of present day, the lab that Dave Chappelle works at is doing testing, I think, for the FDA and for the government. And I forget exactly what they say, but it seemed really similar to like present day events and what things were kind of being talked about, like these super secret laboratory experiments and testing going on. And it's like this cozy relationship, this crony relationship between the FDA and the government and this big mega pharmaceutical company. And this, of course, was made in 1998, back when pharmaceutical companies were the bad guys. In fact, I think it wasn't even that long ago when they were the bad guys. Oh, maybe 2019 or even early 2020, at least as far as the left goes. But how things have changed in recent times. But the other thing that I thought that was kind of fun was that Chappelle made this point that he's not a janitor. He's a practitioner of the custodial arts. I thought that was kind of a fun thing because you'll kind of get that a lot. Like just calling something a different name changes the status of that thing, even though the thing is the same, but you're just calling it something different. And perhaps it's like an air of more respect, but it's still, you're cleaning up stuff. You're a janitor. So calling something else something different doesn't really change the nature of the thing itself.
Yeah, the janitor point, I was thinking about taking that kind of in making a different point out of that, in that almost using the what do you call it? The separation of crap. I'm having a complete brain fart all of a sudden.
How high are you right now?
I'm half baked. I'm just the not separation of powers. The crap. What am I trying to think of? We're like different people have different roles in an economy. What's the
specialization, division of labor?
Division of labor. That's what I'm looking for. Division of labor. Thank you. Wow. But yeah, I mean, so Dave Chappelle, think about it. And obviously he's not really a custodian in real life, but let's just say, he's a great comedian. Let's say he also was a great custodian. Well, that doesn't mean that he's going to, the custodian job is still going to be available for somebody else just because Dave Chappelle can make so much more money being a comedian than he can being a custodian, that even though he is the best custodian in the world, and that anybody who's hiring a custodian would prefer to hire Dave Chappelle because he's such a great custodian, he's not going to be available for that job because his labor will have been allocated elsewhere where it's more valuable to society and to him, and therefore that custodian job will be available to somebody else. So I think that's a cool aspect of the market, even though I can't remember what it's called.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I remember Gene Callahan made that point in his book, Economics for Real People, where he was talking about a basketball player like Michael Jordan. And his point was Michael Jordan is very athletic, and if he studied to be a great house painter, he could probably be the best house painter ever, the best house painter in the world, and do it twice as fast as anyone else and do a much better job. But he can only command so much, even at the peak of those skills. And so it's actually better off for society that somebody who's not quite as good of a house painter does the painting of houses, maybe not as fine of a job and maybe not as fast as of a job, but that way Michael Jordan could allocate his labor, his time and resources and his talents to the game of basketball and entertaining millions of people and doing product endorsements and all of those things. And he became arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. And he could have been the greatest house painter of all time, but we wouldn't be talking about him tonight. So even though somebody who's not quite as athletic, not quite as skilled, would still end up painting houses, but it's the division of labor and specialization, and also it allows people to kind of gravitate towards what they have a natural affinity to and a natural skill set for and a desire to do.
And what society has a demand for. We like to hate the state as much as anything, but I really like to also appreciate the market as much as possible, and just point out those little intricacies and idiosyncrasies that arise just naturally within the marketplace. I think it's really cool.
All right, so that's probably a big chunk of our show tonight, talking about that one thing about him wanting to be called a custodian.
Yeah.
A patron of the custodial arts.
I think you brought up another good point, though, too. Sorry to interrupt you, about the FDA and their crony relationship with pharma companies, and the CDC is the same deal. And it absolutely is just amazing, in the last year, how people who love to hate on corporations are the first one to go get jabbed in the arm by a creation of those corporations. And anytime you point out the long history, and even actually he
brings it up.
She brings up the Tuskegee experiments very briefly, and it's kind of almost like a nothing piece of dialogue. It gets passed over really quick, but that's something that people don't even think about, that the government likes to experiment on people medically. It's not a new thing, and even if it's not experimenting, they're in the position where they can use their power to, at the behest of some large corporation, just distribute millions of doses of a vaccine that who knows how much money these corporations are making off of this stuff. So it's quite interesting. I think it's a good point you brought up.
All right. Well, I want to do that from time to time. Now, I did want to bring up the Tuskegee experiments because it is brought up briefly, and it does also make sense in modern times, like why people might be skeptical of things that are going on for their own good, or even just without full informed consent, because those are big issues related to, like, the Hippocratic Oath and war crimes. That these types of things aren't supposed to happen, and yet seemingly those ideas and those concepts are sort of lost in the milieu of fear and making people afraid of just normal daily interactions. And I'm not trying to claim that there's nothing that's out there going around, but I am saying that, in my opinion, that it is being over dramatized to push a narrative and to push and promote something that maybe isn't in the best interest of individuals making their own choices. If they were just giving out the objective, raw data, then maybe it would have a little bit more sway with me. But when they're obviously manipulating how they're collecting the data, how they're presenting the data, and it only works in seemingly one direction, then that raises red flags for me. And so, I think that just transparency and actual disclosure is far better tactic than obfuscation and squelching of speech and limiting communication and questions.
Yeah, I know you guys have been talking a lot about the corona and the lockdown and whatnot, and I think you're absolutely right. And even just as much, it's just the fact that they didn't talk at all about hey, there's you can help your immune system if you take vitamins and exercise and get out in the sun and things like that, and you'll be a little bit less likely to have a bad reaction if you do happen to get infected. And that nobody talks about the fact that obesity is a really strong trigger for COVID being a lot harsher on the body than a non-obese person. So the fact that they don't bring up any of that stuff and all the only solution is masks and quarantine and lockdowns and vaccines. That's all. It's pretty obvious what they're doing.
Yeah. Now we should probably actually talk about this movie because ostensibly this is a show about movies.
That's
so
right.
Can you remind me, was the Tuskegee experiments, that wasn't the syphilis one, right? Where they were saying they were treating people with syphilis, but they weren't actually treating them with anything, and they were just seeing what the long-term effects were going to be over the course of decades?
No, that's exactly what it was. And I think in some cases they actually infected people with, healthy people with syphilis. They didn't just observe people who already had syphilis. I'm pretty sure, and I'd have to look this up and confirm, but something is telling me that they also actively infected people with syphilis to see how the disease kind of grew and developed over time.
Yeah, lovely.
Right, nice people.
All right, well, let's move on to another subject, and I think that this is sort of a property rights issue, and also like is this truly a crime issue? And that is the police horse's untimely death as a result of being fed junk food by a stoner. And it just so happens that that horse is diabetic and so sensitive to having all these sugars and other things in the junk food, and it ends up killing the horse. Now, of course, I'm rhyming now, they're going to throw the book at Harlan because they view this horse as a police officer, sort of like a canine. They treat them as officers as well. And so for the sake of the movie, it's murder of a police officer. But what's your stance on, like, obviously there was no intent, right? Harlan Williams' character was not intending to harm the horse. Granted, he didn't own the horse, didn't know, the medical history of the horse or anything like that. So he was doing something he should not have done. It was not his property. It was the property of the state or the police force or the handler, the officer who was the horse's partner, I guess. And so I can see that there was some transgression against property there. So Harlan was in the wrong, but he wasn't doing a murder, in my estimation.
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't a murder of a human either. And basically, he was getting charged with. That's what they made it sound like, that he was being charged as if he had killed an actual, human police officer. And I wonder how much, the cop himself, if he bears any responsibility. That was a lot of food that Brian was feeding the horse there. So it probably took a good while. So the cop left his horse in public there, unattended, unsupervised. So it's his, and it's public property too, right? It's not. So that's kind of a gray area. But I think it's just an example of, and because it's the fact that they charged him with killing a cop that's a real life thing. Like if you kill a canine, they'll charge you with assaulting a police officer or killing a police officer. They treat that as if like it's actually one of them, which is kind of crazy. So the movie was actually pretty pretty accurate in its portrayal of that. But no, I think if anything, it would be him having to buy the department a new horse. That would be the proper that if justice really being served, if that's the way that it had gone. The way that it went was absolutely not justice being served.
Right. Now, the monetary amount might have been roughly similar. I don't know how much a horse like that would cost, but
$1 million, you think?
Well, they were trying to raise, what, 10% of that to get the bail?
Yep. 100,000.
Or the bond, right? How does that work? So it's 10% of the amount of the bail that goes through a bondsman, right?
I guess. I don't know. Fortunately, I've never had to do it.
But yeah. So yeah, I think replacing the property that was damaged or killed is probably more appropriate. And I also think that, yeah, you're right. You bring up a good point that the officer had some responsibility to maintain like stewardship of the horse and make sure that it wasn't just left unattended and put at risk, being out in a public environment, public place like that. Like anyone could have messed with it. And just so happened the Harlan Williams character was just trying to help him, just trying to feed him. Yep. I wanted to swing us back to the FDA thing just real quick, because they say that they're doing FDA testing to see if marijuana has any medicinal uses. And I was wondering if that's perhaps a conflict of interest, because it's the government who has laws against marijuana utilizing the government's own services to determine whether the outcome is something that they want it to be. So it doesn't sound like there's really checks and balances at play here, and that there's an impartiality, though they might claim there's one on paper. But it certainly seems to me like science that has any government influence or direction is, by its very nature, corrupted in some way, and it's no longer just seeking truth, but rather seeking outcomes that are sort of like embedded in the questions and in what is being looked at.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's obviously an aspect of regulatory capture that has happened with the FDA and with the agencies that do this testing. And so a pharmaceutical company that has a drug that is a pain reliever or something, they don't want more competition. They want more people buying their drug. And so if they can use the government to do a test and have that test be predetermined that it's going to say that there are no medicinal benefits, that that cannabis does not act as a pain reliever, then it's better for their business. So yeah, that phenomenon of regulatory capture is real, and so no, there is no reason to trust their testing and anything that they say. I think Lou Rockwell has said since I've been following him, that pretty much anything the government says, you can believe the opposite. And I think there's a good amount of truth to that.
Right. And just the concept of regulatory capture is revolved around a number of things, but one of the concepts is protectionism. So it's the entrenched interests who have political influence and an entrenched position, utilizing the government apparatus by which to exclude upstart competitors and make it more burdensome for them to be competitors to the entrenched interests. Plus, there's the revolving door of those who are in the agency, in the bureaucratic realm, are often those who have the expertise from the private sector, and vice versa. They go back and forth between them. And so, of course, these outcomes are going to be a result of these cozy relationships and this back and forth exchange of, I guess, favors for each other.
Yeah, and that, the bloodiest example of that is in the military industrial complex with, the boards of directors of, Lockheed Martin going into the Pentagon and going into think tanks, and that revolving door. It also exists in the financial and the banking industry. It exists in the pharmaceutical industry. But actually, if you want to hear something super interesting, my wife and I were researching and starting to get into this Delta 8 business. Colorado is one of the states that has made Delta 8 illegal, which surprised me because they were one of the first to legalize marijuana to begin with. And what I found out was that it was through lobbying of the legal cannabis industry that led to the making Delta 8 illegal. They wanted to eliminate a competitor.
Right. So it's who gets there first.
So right, and when I heard that, I was just, it was just like facepalm out, like crazy, because it's like, man, we don't even think about living in a free country. All this work that we put in to legalize marijuana, and now these they're just making it into another boys club where, what pisses me off the most about the way that the state has gone about legalizing marijuana is that for years the war on drugs has hit the hardest poor people, and especially poor minorities. And as cannabis becomes legalized, as it becomes decriminalized, it should be a boon for those communities, because it's the barrier to entry should be very minimal. It's called weed for a reason. It grows anywhere. Anybody should be able to grow half dozen plants in their backyard or in their attic or whatever, and sell to their neighborhood if they want to. But the government puts all these licenses and barriers to entry, and makes it into a boys club, so that it's liberals kind of have a point when they talk about the rich getting richer, because all they see is these corporations, but what they don't see is the fact that they've been lobbying the power of the politicians and of the bureaucrats for their own benefit at our expense. So, when I heard that about the Delta 8 industry, and that's why it had been made illegal in Colorado, it was just, man, it's just one of those things that every time we think we're making progress, it's a step forward and two steps back.
Yeah, it's wild how things are legalized but not decriminalized, which I think there's a difference. Legalize is sort of like, hey, let's make it okay with all of these regulations and permits and licenses and taxes and all of those things, which is also very exclusionary. And you're right about the impacts on minority communities and things like that. And, if the left likes to talk about this concept of institutional racism, and I think that in the sense that they speak of it, I don't think that that they're necessarily accurate in what it is and where it is, but it does exist in the realm of governments and regulations and business licenses and permits and regulations and taxes, all of these things that are burdens on starting a small business and doing something that is productive for your fellow man, rather than, working for the government or working for a big corporation, or not working and receiving welfare or other benefits as a result. So in essence, they're incentivizing not being productive, and it becomes a trap of sorts, because now you have to like make over a certain amount, and the only difference is the spread between what you could have received by doing nothing versus what you're maybe going to receive by doing work, and that gap between those two things is not often sufficient enough for people to take that risk and make that change, because it's not from zero up to whatever they're earning. It's from a baseline level and then only so much more. And so that's the difference that they're weighing.
Yeah, that's why we see, there's help wanted signs in just about every single window that I see driving around. And I work with a lot of people in kind of the industrial, manufacturing, warehouse type world, and all of those type of places are hurting for work. And yeah, it's more money to sit at home and just collect a check, or it's maybe it's a little bit less money, but it's certainly much less aggravation than actually having to drive yourself to a job and stay there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and actually do something. It's much more fun to watch Half Baked all day and and smoke weed. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's I guess maybe another place we could take this, and what I like about, and your point about the legalizing versus decriminalizing is a good one. I make that point a lot, that I much prefer decriminalizing, because as long as if they're just legalizing it, then there's still if they have licenses associated with it, if they have whatever other regulatory barrier to entry associated with it, then there's still a crime associated with it. Mm-hmm. So, it's not decriminalized because there's still a crime associated with it. If you cultivate cannabis without the proper license, then you can still get arrested and go to jail. So there's still a crime that they'll willing to charge you with. So, in my mind, decriminalization, full decriminalization, such that there's no crime associated with it, is the way to go. But that all being said, just in the little bit of movement in the direction of freedom that we have seen, whether it's in the state like we're in Washington, and the legal marijuana industry, or even in the Delta 8 world that I'm in, what I'm seeing is that the market is naturally doing all of the things that us libertarians say that we would say that it would do. For instance, one of the things in the movie, they buy some weed that is just like out of this world, and it puts them, basically they're like flying through the air. They blow it in their dog's face and he's flying through the air. It's just completely out of this world. So, in the black market, whatever you buy, you're not really sure exactly what you're getting, which one of the things that we argue about, the opioid epidemic, is because people get hooked on heroin, and then they get a dose of heroin that's stronger than what they're used to, and they overdose. We've been seeing in the legal cannabis market and in the Delta 8 market that it just becomes standard in the market that people have third-party independent laboratory testing available with whatever product they're selling. So you can, as a consumer, know exactly what you're getting. And there's the increase in the available types and quality of products has gone up. And so the competition has driven better quality, and it's prices are competitive, and there's different, I'm doing 10% off with a coupon code. I'm trying to be competitive here, but between it's just like I was saying, the market has done what we say it would do, and if we can convince more people that we should just continue in this direction, with other drugs and with taking the cannabis world even further than we have taken it, these types of benefits will just continue.
Right, and of course the market we're talking about is the legalized tax and regulate version of it. So a very hampered version of the market, and yet we're still seeing these beneficial things come as a result of it. So it'd only be that much better. And if I recall, you also did a website called Breaking Liberty, where you analyzed Breaking Bad television series. And in that, there was a market gap or a hole in the market where somebody could come in and make a better product and a more, I guess, more recognizable product. And that's where the blue product that Walter White was making, it was much more potent. It was recognizable. It was purer and more effective. And so it ended up taking a lot of business from Tuco and Gus Fring, right? And similarly, we see this in American Gangster with the great Denzel Washington movie, where he, as an entrepreneur, finds a better source for the product, and he gets a higher grade of it and has a lower cost, so he can sell better stuff at lower prices than his competition. And this is in a highly illegal market in New York City in, I think, the 70s or the late 60s into the 70s. And that's another great movie that we haven't done, American Gangster.
Yeah, I'd love to. I love that movie. That's one of my favorite movies. I think I suggested that at one point. But no, you're exactly right. And it's amazing that even in the black market, the competitive forces of the market are going to be there regardless. What the black market does allow for, though, is for violent forces to also be used as a, I guess, competitive strategy. I mean, even in Half Baked, they get into a beef with Samson, and Samson's ready to have them all murdered, because they are encroaching on his territory, and that is only possible in the black market. You don't see Coors Light, the CEO of Coors Light having, camping out outside the headquarters of Budweiser to take out the CEO. It doesn't work that way in the above ground market. So, again, the benefits of a superior product would come from eliminating the war on drugs and abolishing, these cartels and these gangs and eliminating all the violence that goes with the war on drugs too. That would also be eliminated. So, I don't understand why everybody doesn't agree with everything all libertarians say. It's just
you're just thinking about yourself, you greedy, selfish bastard. Yeah. So Mark Thornton has done some really great work related to the drug war, and he talks about these concepts of purity and more awareness of what it is that you would be purchasing and ingesting. And those things would be benefits of the market. So we'll put that on the show notes page as well. And you mentioned real briefly just a moment ago that the Coors Light isn't going to sit in the, out there to whack the Budweiser CEO. Yeah, maybe not in a physical violence sense, but they are going to use that apparatus we were talking about earlier, the crony, cozy relationship with the regulators and having the protectionist policies that would prevent upstarts. So Coors and Budweiser might be established interests, but the microbreweries and other entrants into the competitive landscape would see hurdles thrown in front of them. And that's sort of how they do it in the quote-unquote legalized market, is utilizing the government to hamper and restrict their competitors.
Yeah, it's third-party violence, huh? Yeah, that's a really good point. It's kind of like the people who want to be charitable by advocating for welfare. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and we actually see the characters in this movie. Let's bring it back to the movie. Rapid fire round, because we're already 47 minutes into this. But when Chappelle and Guillermo and Jim Brewer's characters are caught selling the drugs, and then Samson, he gets on their radar, or they get on his radar, and he starts extorting them for $20,000 a week. then they go and rob the lab, and they get caught by the police. So what do? They make a deal with the police to weaponize the police action against Samson, their competitor.
Yeah, it's wild. Sorry, I was a little bit distracted there too, so I don't have much to riff to take that from you here. I apologize.
No problem. And I guess you could argue that they weren't planning to continue into their venture, but they had made a deal with the cops to drop the charges against them and to get their Harlan Williams character out of jail. So, I mean, I can kind of see why they would have done that. They were certainly incentivized to do so. But it also comes back to the drug war, which the girlfriend that Dave Chappelle, the girl that he meets, she's very much bought into all the propaganda about marijuana being a gateway drug and drugs are bad, MK, and all drug dealers are bad people. They all belong in jail. And I kind of took issue with her believing those things because I don't share those same beliefs. But also I took issue with Dave Chappelle's character lying to her about knowing that about her, knowing that that's her opinion, then him lying to her about himself and his drug use and drug dealing, I thought was bad Dave, you know? And he did a lot of bad stuff in this movie. He was funny, but he was also like, he stole from the bum so that he could have ice cream money on that date where he was trying to stay under $8 or something like that.
Yeah, and he stole from that lab too. I mean, even though that lab is a crony, institute, and therefore, that it could be argued whether or not it's their property to begin with or not. Yeah, I mean, it's you're right. Mary Jane. For as hot as she was, her beliefs about the drug war are a turn off.
It's like she saw Reefer Madness and believed it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a gateway drug. Yeah, it's and also you're right. Yeah, lying to somebody, especially someone that you're trying to have an intimate relationship with, like that. That's not the way to go about it. Unless all he cares about is getting in her pants. But there's also moral qualms with that too.
I'm going to put my Robert hat on for a minute, and that is, since you can't divulge everything about yourself when you're first meeting somebody and you always put your best foot forward, you're sort of always kind of lying to the other party when you're in these dating stages. So Dave Chappelle's character was sort of an extreme iteration of that. And I think that he was lying directly, like she asked him direct questions and he gave direct false information. But
right. As opposed to just lying by omission and omitting the maybe the negative aspects of yourself or your past, when you're in that dating. So I get Robert's point there. But yeah, an overt and a direct out and out lie like that. I mean, I don't know. I think everybody does it from time to time, but it's not something that we want to do. It's not something that we should do, just from a moral speaking. That being said, I don't think he should be thrown in jail for it either. I don't think the state should come with their enforcement dogs to enforce any kind of relationship morality by any means. But
relationship police.
Yeah, I would, just when it comes to my children, I'll probably try and raise them not to behave that way.
Right. Well, I wanted to get to talking about those cameos real quick because I thought that those were really fun and well done. And you mentioned Bob Saget. He did one, and he was actually in the same area shooting a film of his own at the time. I think it was Dirty Work. He was the director for Dirty Work, the great Norm Macdonald movie. And so he was able to come and do this cameo. And what's so great about Bob Saget's cameo is that he's known as being on Full House and America's Funniest Home Videos as this nerdy, straight-laced guy. And then in this movie, he says some of the raunchiest, crazy, whacked out shit that you can, and so it has that just shock value. And I understand that his stand-up comedy has a similar kind of tact to it, in that he has this, impression that a lot of people have of him in the social milieu, that he's, this straight-laced guy, and then he kind of shocks them with his profanity and talking about doing blow off of hookers and things like that. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, that was a great cameo. And I guess in '98, this was probably the first time that Saget came out that way, and so it was, as you say, a great shock value. But yeah, his comedy is just that way, and he did a cameo or two in the HBO TV show Entourage too, and he was extremely raunchy in that show. It was hilarious. And so yeah, I loved the Bob Saget cameo. I love Jon Stewart too. You ever look at the stars on weed?
You ever listen to Les Nighters on weed?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go to thchchempspot.com, coupon code last night, and you can.
Yeah, go to that website on weed. It's even better. Of course, you might mistype it. I don't know. The Snoop Dogg one was pretty funny too. I mean, he does tons of these cameos. This is probably one of the early ones. But he was in, at least famously for me and my wife, Trailer Park Boys for I think a season even. He was like a recurring character for quite a bit of it. And it's just like anytime there's like a weed related TV show or movie, Snoop Dogg makes an appearance. And it's just like it's almost like a requirement these days. In fact, if you have such a thing without Snoop Dogg in it, it doesn't quite feel authentic.
Yeah, you're right about that. He played a good. It wasn't about weed, but he played a great little almost not really a cameo piece. It was more of a character piece. But he was in Training Day. He was really good in that.
Oh, was he in a wheelchair in that one?
He was in a wheelchair. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Training Day is another movie I want to do. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great movie. I guess we can talk about other movies at a different time, but
yeah, maybe in the post show Kathleen Turner Overdrive bonus content available for our Patreon supporters. Go to lastnighters.com/Patreon. You can get some pre-show and post-show bonus content when you send us some dollars. We'll send you links, and you can check those things out.
You still have people that aren't Patreon supporters? I can't believe that.
Well, the ratio is closing because we're not growing our audience very much. So any new Patreon person we get digs into that ratio.
See? All right.
I thought that the Willie Nelson one was pretty good too. I mean, he looked old back then. That was 98. So what are we? We're coming on like 23 years and he's still out kicking, I guess. And was he the one who talked about when a dime bag cost a dime? So maybe you can go on an inflation-related rant. Dave Smith's most recent episode, and I'll put that on our show notes page, he gave a really great explanation for about 45 minutes about the effects of inflation, what inflation truly is versus what we're sort of told it is in the mainstream and in the media. And he makes a great point. Willie Nelson, a dime bag used to cost a dime. And now it's... when I was in high school, it was like a 40 bag was like an eighth. And I don't know what it is these days.
31.99 on my website, I think. I forget.
Okay, and that's before the 10% off. Very nice.
Yeah, right. Right. But there's probably tax and whatnot. But anyways, sorry, what did you say?
We're talking about inflation when a dime bag costs a dime.
Yeah. Because I mean, yeah, you're right. We hate the state, and for me, it's three primary reasons. One is the wars, killing people in our names overseas. Two is the war on drugs, which is what this movie is primarily about, and the fact that we lock people up and steal people's freedoms. All in the name of victimless crimes for an oxymoron there for you. Oxymoron is not the word I'm looking for. Whatever. But But then lastly is the the Federal Reserve, and yeah, the inflationary monetary policy, and the fact that, you know, they make us all poorer because they just print money out of thin air. You know, there's a reason why counterfeiting is a crime, because if you create your own money at home and go out and buy stuff with it, well, then you're just really stealing stuff, because you're getting stuff for free. You haven't earned that money. You just printed it. You know, you just created it out of nothing. Well, that's what the Federal Reserve does all day, every day, and all of that money that they create goes to, you know, the biggest banks and the Treasury Department, and so, you know, when Bernie and AOC folks talk about the rich getting richer and inequality and 1% and all this kind of stuff, the fact that they don't talk about the Federal Reserve and central banking is just a huge blind spot in their whole worldview. And so, yeah, you know, the fact that, you know, Willie Nelson can make that joke and everybody gets it, because everybody does understand that, yeah, prices rise over time. Prices shouldn't rise over time. Prices should fall over time, and our buying power, you know, we should be able to purchase more with our dollars that rather than less if we were in a commodity money system or a competitive money system, as opposed to this state fiat money system run by the Federal Reserve since 1913.
Right. And inflation these days has become more and more noticeable. Of course, they're using a flawed measuring stick called the CPI, which they change how it is calculated every couple of years. And so when you look at these things historically, you're actually comparing apples and oranges. But even beyond that, it's measuring price increases in certain commodities, and it eliminates even counting some things that are more affected by this increase in the money supply, like food and energy costs, things of that nature. And there's a great book. This, I think, is directed more towards children, but it's a book by Richard Maybury called Whatever Happened to Penny Candy. It's a fast, clear, and fun explanation of economics that talks about the inflationary effects of creating more money and chasing the same amount of goods. And we see a great example of this in present day, where there have been restrictions and lockdowns that have restricted output and made supply chains more strained. And so we see massive increases in prices of things because we have more dollars chasing fewer produced goods and services. And so that, of course, is reflected in price increases that we see all across the board. And we're starting to see that sort of admitted into the mainstream media. Of course, it's called transitory or short, you know, for a limited time, and only things, you know, will return to normal before you know it. But of course, they've printed trillions and trillions of dollars. So those do end up going somewhere. And it has been going on for a long, long time. And for the last decade or so, a lot of that money was still sitting as reserves parked at the Federal Reserve by the big banks. And so it wasn't actually injected directly into the economy, where it wasn't chasing goods and services. And so the apparent price inflation was sort of held back. But the monetary inflation had already occurred. And I think that it isn't going to be too much longer before we start really feeling the effects of all of that and the exponential increase that we've been seeing. I don't know if you've seen a chart lately, but even 10 years ago, the chart was an exponential logarithmic function. And I'm sure it's even worse these days. You can even just look administration over administration and what the national debt was, and just charting that, and you'll see a massive, massive increase. And it does seem to be getting into unsustainable territory. Granted, I thought that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and I know that a lot of people of our like-mindedness have been thinking these things since the 70s. So it certainly can seem to go along longer than anyone truly expects that it can.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the whole reason why Ron Paul got into Congress to begin with, was when Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard, or decoupled the dollar from gold the last time in 1971 there.
August 15th. We're almost coming up on that anniversary.
You're right. Yeah, we're about a month away here. But yeah, the price inflation and just the economic uncertainty that causes is very, very real. I'm seeing that in my day-to-day business. Where when I would put a proposal together, I used to be able to say the price was good for 6 months, and now I'm not confident putting 30 days on my pricing, because we've seen regular price increases in our materials that we sell. I sell LED lighting to industrial and commercial facilities, and the LED lights that we sell, people are seeing really huge strain on shipping. It's really tight, and just costs are rising. I think just in the last 6 months, there's been like a 250% increase in the cost of transportation and the cost of shipping. So it's causing a Robert Higgs term, it's causing some regime uncertainty, and people are being a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger on things, just because there's so much uncertainty just from what prices are going to be day to day, and what lead times are going to be day to day. So the economy is really in a bad place, and it doesn't feel that way. The stock market's through the roof, and there's all kinds of positive vibes in the retail world, and people are spending money. But this moratorium on kicking people who haven't paid their rent, of kicking them out of their houses or out of their apartments, and this artificially high unemployment rate, I don't think it's going to last forever. And the price inflation that inevitably follows monetary inflation, it's gonna come. There's just no way around it. You're right. They have been able to kind of make it last a lot longer than anybody has thought it would. But at the same time, every 10 years, it feels like there's the crazy economic meltdown that just wipes a whole bunch of people out. In this past year, it was really kind of artificially created, all these lockdowns, and forcing businesses to shut down, and the almost like similar idea to the regulatory capture and the crony relationships. The Costco's and the Amazons and the Walmarts of the world have done really good in the last year, and the small, family-owned shops have not, because they've been forced to shut down. So just all kinds of crazy stuff, and at the heart of it is the Fed and the monetary inflation, and the fact that a dime bag used to cost a dime.
All right, way to bring it back to the movie a little bit. So there's just a couple of more things I wanted to bring up, and then we can do a final summary review and maybe give a number of bong rips out of 10. But I really like some of the iconic scenes that make really good GIFs when you're replying to somebody on Facebook. There's the boo this man when he goes to the Narcotics Anonymous meeting and says that he's addicted to weed, and that's when Bob Saget does his do you suck dick for marijuana? Come on, man, you're doing cocaine off of hookers. But there's the guy, is it Marlon Wayans or one of the Wayans brothers, says boo this man, throws his hat. So I use that GIF a lot. I also really like the one where Guillermo Diaz is at the restaurant and he's quitting, and he says, I hate you, or fuck you, you're cool, and fuck you, and I'm out. I really enjoyed that one. And there's a couple of other ones that I think are just really funny that I had forgotten that they were in this movie until watching it again recently the other day.
Yeah, there's some classic lines in this movie that people probably throw out without even realizing what movie that they're quoting. It's, it's one of those, like the on weed. Like I forgot that was in this movie, and
Hmm.
I've heard that joke so many times. I've been a pothead myself for half my life now, so I've traveled in those circles, and that's one of those just things that gets said from time to time. And yeah, I forgot a lot of the hilarity that was in this movie. It had some good comedic moments for sure.
Yeah, I can definitely see why it has sort of achieved that cult status, and I think that has a lot to do with these cameos and with these kind of iconic moments and sayings that people will continue to say even if they forgot where they originally got them from. So that makes me kind of think that this movie is indelible, and it sticks with you, and it is worth going back and watching. As dumb as it is, and as kind of nonsensical as the story is, it has tons of things that are redeeming qualities. And so I'm going to give this 6.5 bong rips out of 10. So that's my final summary review right there.
Okay, nice. Yeah, there's a couple of really funny moments in the movie. One of my favorites was when Brian, he was working in the record store, and somebody's trying to sell him a Kenny Loggins album, and he's like, "I'll give you $5 for it," and she's like, "But it's autographed by Kenny Loggins." He's like, "Okay, I'll give you $4 for it." And man, that just killed me. I thought that was so funny, and because he clearly was making a joke that like, oh, it's like I want it even less now that I know it's signed by Kenny. Like he made the joke to himself, and he like made himself laugh in the movie. That was really funny. And then at the end, when the stoned cops were also really funny. When they made fun of Chappelle for the letter that he wrote Mary Jane, I thought that was really funny. But yeah, it's 6.5 was the number that I had in mind. I think I'm gonna be right there with you. 6.5 bong rips. Probably round it up to 7. Just get that little bit of extra THC in there for before I go off to sleep here. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it had some really funny moments, and was a really good opportunity to talk about some of these libertarian issues. That's always fun to do as well.
All right. Well, very good. Well, I appreciate that you came on to do this one. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do this in person. My wife, the voice of reason at times, said that it was probably not worth the 7 hours of driving for what would have been maybe an hour of hangout time before you would have to leave tomorrow morning.
About that.
Also, I don't know how to record with 2 people in my space. So you might have had to like record it from your car or something ridiculous like that. So you would have driven all the way up here to sit in your car to do the episode. Then we'd hang out for a little bit before bed. And yeah, I mean, granted, YOLO, we only live once. It would have been good to see you in person, but
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know when the next time I'll be up in Seattle, but if I ever do, I will certainly hit you up. And if you're in the Charlotte area, you do the same. But well, I got to say that's a pretty impressive mountain you've got here, Mount Rainier there. That's quite the thing.
Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah, we're up by another one that's not quite as impressive, but it still is pretty nice to look at when we're driving around here. It's a beautiful area, certainly.
Yeah, it really is.
So yeah, that's I think our show tonight. So let's remind people where they can find what you've been working on, and I've got that scrolling down along the bottom. And then also, if you want to throw out your other websites, anything that you're still kind of got out there for people to take a look at.
Yeah, you mentioned Breaking Bad. That's one of my favorite TV shows of all time. It depends whether between if I've watched that or The Wire most recently as to which is my favorite TV show of all time. But it's a toss up between those two. But I liked Breaking Bad so much that I wrote a couple of free ebooks that people can download at breakingliberty.com. Just a collection of essays where I took kind of plot lines or pieces of dialogue and expanded and tried to make libertarian points from that TV show. But what's more related to Half Baked in the movie we talked about here today is my wife and I's latest online business venture, which is THCHempspot.com. We're selling Delta 8 THC cannabis products. If you use promo code last night, you get 10% off your order, and Daniel and Robert get a cut too. They get a little commission thrown their way. So if you're a fan of the show, and if you like to smoke some pot, and go over to my website, thchempspot.com, use coupon code last night, and you'll benefit. Daniel and Robert will benefit. I'll benefit. Everybody wins. It's the beauty of the market. All this mutually beneficial transactions that we're able to engage in. So yeah, that's it. THChempspot.com.
All right, very good. And thank you again for being our guest. And just a couple of closing notes here. People can get our pre-show and post-show bonus content by going to lastnighters.com/Patreon. People can find the show notes and more at lastnighters.com/186. And you can also find our episodes at the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel. And I think the last thing I wanted to mention, what we're doing next week. So we haven't actually decided what movie we want to do next week. So we're going to do an episode roulette where we're going to spin a wheel in the next couple of days to not only to decide the movie, but also to decide the guest. And so it's going to be a mystery movie and mystery guest next week. But for the last year or so, we've been telling you guys all what we're doing the following week, and we're going to change it up, make it a little exciting. It's going to be a mystery meet. But you can find the show notes more for this at lastnight.com/186. You can find Jared's website at breakingliberty.com and also at thchempspot.com. Use the promo code lastnight, no spaces, to save 10% off your order. And we'll see you guys all next week for the mystery movie. And with that, we'll say good night from last night, everyone. Peace out.